All right, guys, what I'm going to do in this video is I'm getting ready to read you a couple of community posts from my school group that I made that I think will be really valuable to you. And they have to do with what I think is the biggest mindset shift that most people need to make when it comes to money if they want to be financially successful. This comes from my experience dealing with financially successful people, as well as what has worked for me as far as improving my financial life. And then I'm going to give you some context on it, explain it a little bit more in detail, and give you some actionable steps that you can take to improve your financial situation, whether it's you want to, just make enough money to not be stressing, or if you want to be very financially successful. So let's get into it. So the first post that I want to read, I titled it Saving Money. And by the way, if you want to join the school community, it's a pretty tight-knit group of guys. We really, have become close friends. The link is in the description box below. I've got a ton of courses in there on everything from, improving your dating life to making more money, starting a business. We do weekly calls and all that kind of stuff. Links in the description box below. But back to the video. So this first post that I made that I want to read to you guys, I titled it Saving Money. And here's what I said. I said, there are a lot of people who think they can save themselves rich, or at least financially secure. They fancy themselves smart for canceling their Netflix subscription when the price goes up from $12 to $14. But the truth is, you cannot save yourself rich. If you saved $15 a month on some subscription you cut back on, you'd save $180 a year, meaning over 10 years, you'd save $1,800, and over 100 years, you'd save a whopping $18,000, barely enough to make a down payment on a house. The solution isn't to save money, it's to make more. There's only so much saving you can do, but there's unlimited money you can make. The only way to become financially secure is to get to a level where you are earning enough money to easily afford your desired lifestyle with plenty of room to spare. Figure out what that number is and don't worry too much about saving until you get there. So this is kind of like groundbreaking to a lot of people, I feel like, is this notion that saving money isn't really that good of an idea. I actually, at this point, am a believer that you shouldn't save money unless you have a good reason to, meaning like you're saving for a mortgage on a house, or you're saving for a car, or you're saving for, some trip, or like whatever it is. You're saving for a practical reason. Like for me, one thing kind of that I'm saving for right now is I want to have a certain amount of cash set aside so that when different business opportunities open up for me, I have enough money to invest into those opportunities. So I have a tactical reason for saving some money. But just this whole notion of a penny saved, a penny earned is fucking stupid, guys. I'm just going to be totally honest. And here's why. You save a penny and you don't actually earn a penny. What happens is the government takes 50% of it. So you're down to 0.5 cents. And then inflation's going to eat up another, 10% of that each year. So now you're down to like 0.4 cents. So a penny saved is 0.4 cents earned. So this notion that you're saving this money and that means you have it, it's not true. Like your money's getting taken from you either way. And so the game that I have found with financially successful people is that it's not about saving money. It's about figuring out how to use your money to make more money. And this is a big mindset shift because they've got us in this society where most people are on these 2-week paycheck mindsets. So they're used to getting their little stimulus from their job and they plan around it. And they're like, oh, we can cut back on this, on the groceries here and save $27 this month. And, someday apparently we're going to be financially successful because we did this. And the math doesn't add up. I just read it out to you there. You could literally save for 100 years on some fucking subscription that you tried to cut to be financially smart, and you still couldn't do anything with it. And then again, inflation's eating it up. In 100 years, what is $18,000 going to be worth? It's going to be worth like a fucking Chipotle bowl. Let's be honest. So like you cannot save yourself rich. And I just think this is, there's a lot of kind of hand-wringing out there about people being financially irresponsible. They'll be like, oh, these people, they're like Dave Ramsey kind of shit. And I like Dave Ramsey, but like he'll talk about like, you need to be financially responsible, cut back on your expenses, save your money, like this kind of shit. Don't use a credit card. And like they'll kind of like shit on people who are in credit card debt. And like, yeah, you shouldn't be in credit card debt. That's a really bad idea to do that to yourself. But the answer is not to save money, because there's only so much saving you can do. The problem isn't that most people are financially irresponsible when it comes to like saving. Most people are actually not that irresponsible with their money. In fact, I think most people are a little bit too scared to spend their money. But the real problem is they're just not making enough money. That's the issue. And you can only save so much. If you're making $4,000 a month, you're not going to save yourself out of that situation, right? Your rent's going to cost something. Your car is going to cost something. What, are you just not going to have a car? You're not going to eat food. So you're just going to eat trash food so you can save a little bit of money every month. That makes no sense. It's a terrible idea. The problem is you're not making enough money. And this might sound harsh to people because a lot of people in our society, they really like hate this idea of making a lot of money, and they hate on people for doing it, and they think it's arrogant to talk about it, but it's just a practical reality. It's like, if you want to be okay in this country of America that we're living in, you need to make a minimum of $120,000 per year. Just, that's a harsh fucking truth. How are you going to have a kid and a wife and not make at least $10,000 a month? I have no clue. It's freaking brutal, guys. Like, it's really tough out there. The cost of living keeps going up on everything. You know, I'm in real estate. The average house in my area costs $475,000. And roughly speaking, with the current interest rates that we have, in order to afford that house, you need a household income of about 130 grand. It's like, you cannot own a house unless you're making six figures at this point. You're cooked, guys. And so I wanted to start with this post because you need to first understand this mindset that, like, if you think that you're being smart by saving money on Netflix or saving money on this thing, or I'm going to get the cheaper meat when I go out to the grocery store instead of getting the high quality grass-fed stuff, it's like you're hustling backwards. It's a stupid way to think, truthfully. You need to be thinking in terms of, I need to make more. The problem isn't that you're spending your money on Chipotle. The problem is that you're not making enough money. And here's an example, a story of this. So a lot of you guys who've been with me for a while, you will remember that I lived in Houston, Texas for a while. I moved to Houston, Texas, and I was trying to build an online fitness coaching business at the time, and I was really struggling financially. And I ended up having to live in my car for a night, and then I lived in my friend's garage for a month and a half. I literally couldn't afford a place to live. And I remember at the time I went back and I did a budget, and I was trying to basically be like, why am I in the situation that I'm in, right? I was like, why can I not afford a place to live? And I went and I looked, and I realized I'd spent a lot of money on like Chipotle. I'd probably spent $1,000 on food in the month. And I looked at it, and I was like, if I hadn't spent the money on the Chipotle, then, and I cooked at home or something like that, then I would not have been in this situation. I would have had just enough money to get the next month's rent for the Airbnb that I was going to pay for, so that I could have a roof over my head. And so for the longest time, I looked at this situation and I thought, the reason that I found myself in a bad spot financially was because I was financially irresponsible. And if I had been more frugal and financially disciplined, then this situation wouldn't have happened, right? And it makes sense when you think about that way, when you do this budget and you figure that out, and you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have spent money on that. But then I thought about it recently, and I was like, no, that's actually not true. Chipotle is not the reason that I was in the garage. The reason I was in a garage is I just wasn't making enough money, period. Because here's what would have happened. Let's say I didn't pay for the Chipotle that month. Well, I would have had another month that I could have paid for a roof over my head. But guess what would have happened next month? I still would have been out of money, and I still would have ended up living in a garage or my car or something, because I wasn't making enough. So the issue wasn't that I was so ridiculous with my money by buying Chipotle. The problem was I was just flat fucking broke. And this is just like a harsh reality a lot of people need to understand. It's like, you cannot save yourself rich. You have to think different. You have to understand that if you want to, be doing well in life, you have to just raise the standard for how much money you're making. You cannot accept the plan that society gives you, which is, $50,000 a year or some shit like that. Like I used to make the videos like months ago. I was making all those videos where I would talk about the normal person's life. And I was trying to show you guys how, if you think and act like a normal person, your life is going to fucking suck. This is one of those examples. The average person's in credit card debt. They can't afford shit. I think the average first-time home buyer at this point is like 36 years old. So talk about like, so you've been an adult, like a legal adult, for 18 years before you can even afford to purchase your own property. Like, what the fuck is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you cannot live like normal people and expect to get good results. You have to think differently. And one of those places you have to think is, stop thinking about saving, start thinking about earning more money. And you might be like, well, I'm stuck in this 2-week paycheck job. I'd tell you, well, I honestly feel for you, but maybe you should change industries. Seriously. I mean, because like you have two choices in that situation. You can make this excuse and say, well, I'm stuck in this career path that doesn't pay good, and you can just keep doing that for the rest of your life, or you can just pull the plug, switch directions, get into something that pays you better, and figure that out. It's going to be tough, but I mean, both paths are going to be tough. One of them, you're just going to be broke your whole life. The other one, it's going to be really tough for a while until you figure it out, and then you're going to be financially okay. And you need to start thinking about this like this. And most people aren't going to do this. So the competition is actually pretty scarce. Most people are going to play the victim, blame the system, talk about how the interest rates are the problem, or the Fed is the problem, and the U.S. government needs to give us more money. Like, they're just going to make all this shit up. You're going to be the one person out there who's willing to actually go figure this out and save themselves from a life of being destitute. And this has actually been the reality of most people throughout human history, is poverty, is not owning things. You know, that was called the serf class from the history of like European history. You had the serfs. The serfs lived on the land that they worked for. They were basically slaves. And this was the majority of the population of Europe for all of time. Is you had the lords of the land. That's why it's called a landlord. You had the person who owned this land, and then you had the people who lived on the land because they took care of the land. And that was basically their compensation, was a roof over their head. They owned nothing. They got compensated basically nothing. This is the reality for most of human history. You've been fed this notion that life should be this certain way where everybody gets to own property and everybody gets to have a lot of money. That's just not how it works. Go find me the example where that's true. We had this brief little period in America after World War II where, because we were the global superpower with the world reserve currency, and we had the GI Bill, and we didn't have a bunch of debt, we had no rivals, and the economy was booming because we had this wartime industry that had basically gotten us out of a depression. We had this one brief little moment where all of a sudden everybody was doing well financially. Right now, what is happening is not some evil, corrupt scheme. What is happening is we're returning to baseline, which is most people are flat broke, in debt, in servitude, and then there's a few people who own everything. And you kind of have a choice to make right now. And if you think you're going to save your way out of this, you're fooling yourself. You have a moral obligation to make a fuck ton of money. Seriously. Like, I mean, you should be getting up every day thinking about how can I get filthy rich. Otherwise, I don't know what to tell you. Your life's going to fucking suck. So that's the first one I wanted to talk about, was just get this mindset in your head. You have to make more money. You cannot save yourself out of the situation you find yourself in right now. You're not going to Netflix is not the reason that you're struggling financially. The reason you're struggling financially is you're making $50,000 per year. That's the problem here, okay? Now that leads us into the second post that I wanted to make, and then I want to give you a little bit of commentary and kind of like another mindset that I think is really essential to have here. So you might be asking at this point, okay, like I understand that, you know, I can't save myself rich, but so what does that mean? Do I go out and just spend my money on whatever and, you know, act like an idiot with my money or something like that, and like get some car I can't afford? You know, how do I even increase my income to begin with? Well, here's what you actually need to be doing with your money, because you can't save yourself rich, but you can do this, which can make you wealthy. So this post is called Invest in Yourself. And what I said was, so far this year, I have spent $6,800 on a mastermind coaching program for business, personal development, and high-status networking. I have spent $1,500 on boxing coaching. I have spent $400 on a drone, $2,000 on social media ads, $600 on blood work panels for health optimization, $65 on a short-form content mini course, $100 on books, $700 on a DJI vlog mic. And this was made just a little bit ago. And since then, I've purchased a $900 camera and 2 microphones for my podcast, which were $300 something, some chairs. I'm going to get like stuff for the room because right now it's like super bland in here. You get the idea. I spend a shit ton of money on myself. I feel like I'm forgetting a couple things too, but you get the idea. I'm a huge believer in spending money for personal growth. I think it's the best investment you can make by far, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. Basically, every successful person says the same thing. Let's do it from a simple math perspective. I've spent a minimum of $12,600 so far on personal growth related things. If I left the $12,600 sitting in a bank account, inflation would eat it up, and next year it would be worth probably $12,300 or even less. If I put it into the stock market and hypothetically got a 10% return on it, I'd make $1,260 in a year off of it, not factoring in inflation, which would lower the 10% down realistically to around 6% return. But let's just say that it would net me the $1,260 in a year. What are the odds that investing in myself will make me more than $1,260? I tell you, it's practically 100%. Not to mention all the other benefits that come with it of being a more well-rounded person, pursuing passions, and being healthy and attractive. My philosophy is reinvest as much into myself as I realistically can. I view money as a tool for life maxing, as I've discussed in the past, and a huge part of that is leveling up your character in this game of life. In fact, that might be the biggest part. There isn't much more fulfilling than improving yourself in some way. When you lay the math out, it just makes sense to live this way. Look at your money as your soldiers that you deploy strategically to improve you in different ways. You can deploy money to increase your ability to make money. You can increase your status, get girls, be more attractive, be healthier, make memories, or learn interesting skills and become a Renaissance man. I believe in being financially responsible, but I don't believe in being a bitch with your money. Put your dick on the table, bet on yourself, and spend the money to become the ultimate version of you. Not investing in yourself is like telling the universe you don't believe in you. Most of you guys seem to already understand this mindset. That's just me talking to the guys in the community right there. But so basically the point of this is, what do you do with your money instead of saving it? You can't save yourself rich. What do? You invest it back into yourself. Now, there's a number of reasons why you do this. Number one, it just makes everybody understands this when it comes to college. They're like, oh, I go to college and then I get this job and I get more money because I went to college. And the funny thing is college is probably the worst return you can get at this point, unless you're going to be a lawyer or a doctor. It's kind of not a good investment, right? You can go on YouTube or buy somebody's course for $1,000 and get the same damn thing, probably better. You know what I'm saying? But everybody kind of understands this on certain things, but then they don't understand it in other ways. And I just tell you, it's like, listen, you don't understand how much greater of a version of yourself you could be once you start deploying your money for your own personal growth. This is like, it's a massive force multiplier on everything. The moment you have $1,000 to spend on improving yourself, the moment your life changes. Seriously, like, you will just open doors for yourself. Now, you have to take action. You can't be a lazy bitch about this. Like, if you just buy a course and don't do it, well, it's not going to do anything for you. You have to take action. But my biggest thing, guys, is like, you invest in yourself and just, I'm not sure I've ever regretted it, truthfully. I've spent a lot of money on myself and it has just always paid off. Because in truth, it's like, what else are you going to do with the money? Are you gonna buy a fucking football jersey? Ooh, like a fucking like, seriously, like, what? I mean, what are we doing, guys? Like, it's time to just, invest in yourself. I'm probably gonna have to cut that part out. What else are you gonna do? Buy a new flat screen TV, do all this shit? Like, I mean, again, that's like maybe better than saving the money, truthfully, if it enhances your life, actually. But the best thing you can do with your money is improve yourself. Invest it back into you. And here's the other thing about this is it can't be taxed. You buy stock and then you sell the stock for a profit, the government taxes you on that. They can't tax you on skill. You make yourself a higher level version of yourself, they can't tax you on that. And what happens when you do this is it just compounds in this way that is so hard to understand when you're at the beginning. But what happens is, it's like at the beginning, everybody's basically the same, right? You graduate high school, everybody's very similar, right? Just a bunch of fucking guys who are horny and probably not getting any girls running around out here. Maybe they're trying to get drunk, all this. Like, this is what the life of most like young men is, right? It's just broke losers running around with no plan for their life, just horny as can be. That's basically the life of young men. What happens, and I've made the charts on this in the past, is there's a certain group of people who start investing in themselves. They improve themselves. They do the work. And what happens is it takes off like a fucking rocket, and you compound. And it's this crazy thing that happens. And so, like, for me, it's just, I start figuring out I know so much stuff that people don't know. And I have so many different ways to make money. And I have so many different people that I start to connect with because I'm the kind of person they'd want to connect with because I have something to me, right? It's like you ask somebody, Andrew Tate said this in a video. He said, you need to know what you're doing with your time. And he was like, I spent 10,000 hours in my 20s in a fight gym. It's like, what did you do with that 10,000 hours? And most people can't tell you. They have no fucking clue what they've done with their time. I know what I've done with my time in a lot of ways. I've been in the gym. I've been, recently I've been boxing. I've been, working on money. I've been reading books. I've been investing in myself. I have all these skills. And what happens is you just open up all these doors for good things to happen to you. And so my philosophy when it comes to money, guys, is like, be aggressive. Don't save the cash and I hope I don't go broke or something, like over here, like hoarding the fucking cash like an idiot. Spend it strategically. View your money like soldiers. You are a general and you're looking at this battlefield and you're saying, okay, I've got X amount of soldiers. How can I use these soldiers? What's going to get me ahead? What's going to get you ahead is not playing defense and just putting all your soldiers back in the camp, i.e. saving the money. Like, you have to go on offense. So where are we going on offense with this money, right? What are we going to do? How are we going to deploy this? Be a master strategist with your money and start looking and saying, like, okay, what's the best investment I can make right now? And I'll give you a few examples. If right now, we were talking about somebody who's maybe stuck in a 2-week paycheck job, getting paid $50K per year, what kinds of things should they be doing with their money? I'll tell you, the first thing you need to do is you need to take whatever cash you've got, figure out something that you can do that pays you a lot more than you're doing right now, and put your money into figuring that thing out. And then you just need to do the work on it. There's a ton of different things you can do. You can go get continuing education in some skill. You can, go invest in improving your network. You can learn something like, Facebook ads. You can learn content creation, buy a camera, figure this stuff out. It's not going to be easy, guys. But I mean, the alternative, like I said, is you're just broke your entire life. So you can be a broke bitch your whole life, or you can just man up, figure this shit out, solve it, and then in a couple years, you're going to be good financially. It's just kind of a choice that you have to make pretty much here. And so I would tell you, if you're in that situation, figure out a way to use your money to get into a better situation. And don't tell me there's no options. There's a ton of options out there. You just need to go find something and take action on it. And don't look for your passion. All right, that's the other mistake people make. I need to find my passion. I need to find my purpose in life before I can do anything. You're broke and you're about to be a slave for the rest of your life, indebted to a bunch of banks and the government. Your purpose in life is to avoid that by all means necessary. Whatever you have to do to avoid that situation, that's your purpose. I don't want to hear about some fucking higher calling right now. Like, you have no money to your name. The average person has less than $1,000 in their bank account. They're in debt like nobody's business. They can't afford a home. Don't talk to me about some metaphysical spiritual purpose that fucking God's gonna shoot down like a bolt of lightning on you. Like, the purpose is right in front of you. The purpose is your life sucks and you need to fix this. Okay, do something. Anything's better than where you're at. And so you need to take this money, whatever you've got, and start deploying it. And if you don't have $1,000, if you got $60, you can literally go on Coursera. Coursera is this continuing education platform. Google has a bunch of certifications on there. Take that $60. It's $50 a month for Coursera. Go on there. It's $50 a month. Do your Coursera thing, and then learn, paid ads, learn Google SEO, learn project management, something like that. Transition out of your waiter role making $30K per year, working at fucking UPS or whatever it is, and move into something better. Okay, like just figure this thing out. If you want to do something blue collar people get paid a lot. Figure out whatever certification or skill or technical thing you need for that. Move into that. Like, you got to do something to get out of this situation. You invest your money in this, and then once you've done this and you get your income to a place where you have a little bit of disposable income, we don't start playing defense and now hoarding the cash. What you do is you go on offense again. And that's when you start doing things like, for me, it was boxing class. I have a one-on-one boxing coach. It's things like that. It's, paying for masterminds. It's paying for, improving my network, doing things like that. Starting a podcast right here. You can start thinking long-term about stuff that's going to turn you into the man you want to be in the future. And you can invest in those things now because you've got the short-term issue solved of being flat broke. So this is really the game plan, guys. Stop thinking about saving money. The number of people who, like, my school community is $60 a month. And honestly, guys, like, everybody in the group has been changing their lives. And I don't care that much if you join. Like, I'd love for you to join if you want to join. But it's just like, I'll talk to some people sometime on Instagram and they'll be like, yeah, man, I have no friends and I don't know what to do with my life. And I'm like, you should join the school community. You would get a lot out of it. And they're like, yeah, man, I'll think about it. Like, that's tough though. $60 is tough. Again, I don't want to make this about me, but like the point here is just like flip this mindset. If you're in a spot where $60 is going to break your back, the problem isn't that you can't afford to spend on this thing. The problem is you're so broke that you can't afford to spend on it. You get what I'm saying here? Like you're in this hole right now where $60 is a big decision to you. And if you're in that spot, you have a real problem on your hands, and you're not going to get out of it by hoarding the $60. You have to deploy it. And this is the mindset. I don't care if you don't want to join my group, go do something else. Go pay. I recently paid for this, Instagram content creation thing, those $65. Go buy that if you want to get into that. I don't care. Just you got to do something with the money. If hoarding those last dimes is the last thing you want to be doing. You want to spend it all. Grant Cardone's talked about this. He said, somebody said, it's like, if you had to start over with $1,000, what would you do? He said, I'd spend it immediately. I'd get it out of my hands. Because it's like, it's no good to you when you have it. It's only good when you spend the money. You can only, money is literally worthless unless it is used on something. And so your game here is just to figure out what to use it on that gives you the best return. Okay. So this leads to this quote that I wanted to pull up here. I'm going to pull it up on my Instagram. And the reason I want to read this quote off to you guys is because I'm not immune to this. Like sometimes when business isn't going great, that scarcity mindset starts creeping in and you want to start hoarding your money. You're just like, oh, let me like preserve this cash because I don't know what's going to happen. And like you start getting afraid to spend money. And it's actually the worst thing you can do. Because when you're in these situations, what you want to do is go on offense. And so this is a Robert Greene quote, and I shared it to my Instagram story, and I'm pulling it up. I think this is it right here. This is the quote from Robert Greene, and this was such a it just clicked in my head. I remembered this. I was like, I needed this. I needed to remember this. This is what he said. He said, being more careful is not what we need. That is just a screen for our fear of conflict and of making a mistake. What we need is double the resolve and intensification of confidence. That will serve as a counterbalance. So what he's talking about here is he's talking about the natural instinct of people that when they're feeling under attack, they're feeling stressed, they're feeling like they can't afford things, the money's not coming in, something like that, their inclination in that moment is to get defensive, to be scared, to play it safe. And the problem is what happens when you do this is you actually make it worse. The answer in those situations is you have to double down and go the opposite way. The time to actually, plan for the future or to preserve a little bit of cash is actually when you're rolling. It's not when you're falling down. It's when you're on offense, when everything's clicking. That's when you start getting ready for the future and the worst case scenarios. You don't do that when you're in a bad spot, because right now what you need to do is attack. You need to fix the problem, and you're not going to fix it by hiding from it or preserving your little pennies or something. It doesn't make sense. And another example of this is Ray Dalio, the investor. He made a book about big debt crises, and I've been listening to it recently because Lord knows the U.S. government's going to collapse and go bankrupt here at any moment, and I just want to know what to do about it when that happens. And he starts talking about in the book how to solve a big debt crisis. So when you find yourself as a country or even just really anybody, like what do you do to solve this situation? And he talks about how there's a lot of people who will push in these situations for financial responsibility. They'll call it financial responsibility, right? Austerity. They'll be like, we need to cut back expenses so that we can pay down this debt. They'll start doing that, but that actually makes things worse because what happens is, let's say you're the federal government, and you cut revenues, you cut expenses. So you cut Social Security, you cut Medicaid, you cut the military, you cut these different things. Well, what happens is you're just taking money out of the economy. And so that, and listen, the government to me is way too big. This is not some argument for a gigantic government, but the point is like you cut these things and what happens is you just end up taking money out of the economy. That's all you do. So that $100 billion you save in the military that would have gone to paying for a bunch of stuff, which pays for employees and all this kind of stuff, or the Medicaid that was paying for people to have health insurance. So now they're not getting the Medicaid. So now they have to pay for their health insurance out of pocket or something like that. So now they can't spend their money on this other thing over here and they can't afford it. And so now that business starts to struggle and everything starts to contract because we stopped spending so much money. And so what happens is when you cut back, you end up shrinking everything. And then when you shrink everything, suddenly there's less tax revenue. And so there's less tax revenue going into the government, which then lowers the amount of revenue the government makes, which means that even though they cut the spending, they cut their income as well, which means the debt is still the problem. So you can't actually, if you're a government in this case, you can't actually cut expenses to get out of a debt crisis. What you have to do is you have to do a number of different things, but one of them being you have to actually stimulate the economy. You have to actually get more revenue going by being more aggressive. And then once you've got things really rolling, then you start paying off the debt that way. You don't do it when you're actually face to face with the crisis. And this is how most people, they don't understand this, and this is why they do this thing where they're flat broke and they try and save pennies. And they think in the future someday when I've got a ton of money, that's when I'll be really aggressive with my money. It's like, no, right now is when you need to be aggressive with your money because you have nothing. And hoarding that little bit you've got isn't going to fix anything. You need your money to give you big returns right now. And so you need to be thinking about every dollar you have, how can I turn this into something that's going to change my life? All right, guys. So I hope this was kind of just a rant on this subject, but I hope there's a lot of value in here. Play this thing back seriously because this was a ton of game. If you didn't quite get it, play it back because if you take this approach, I promise you, you can get out of your situation as long as you've got hard work and you've got the balls to use your money for something productive. I'll talk to you later.